Hi there, my name's Jalal Khan. I'm a dentist based in Sydney. Really excited to talk with Eleanor and her community about all things quantum dentistry. We're going to dive deep into quantum biology, the body electrics, light water magnetism, cranial, sacral rhythms, the impact of that on dentistry. Why do we have an epidemic of small mouths? Why do we have an epidemic of chronic disease, non-native electromagnetic frequencies, a little dose of spirituality, and just an all-around great conversation. I hope you all enjoy.
Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Ellie Stein, welcoming you to the Dr. Eleanor Stein podcast. Today's guest is quantum dentist Dr. Jalal Khan. He has a practice in Sydney, Australia, with a lot of emphasis on children and helping them optimize their orofacial structure and dental health. But that's actually not what we're primarily going to be talking about today. Dr. Khan has become an expert in quantum biology. That's the application of quantum physics principles to how our body works. It adds critical information to how we understand the body, and you're going to learn more about that as our discussion unfolds. Dr. Khan's approach to health involves key pillars of optimizing structure, metabolism, emotions, and spirit. I've asked him today to give us a primer in understandable language, because quantum physics can get pretty complicated, about how light, water, and magnetism affect health, and what we can do to use these freely available commodities to get and stay healthy. This episode is for everyone, not only those people with chronic diseases, but also people who are healthy and want to stay that way. If we can understand the quantum principles of how our bodies interact with the universe, we can make great lifestyle decisions to live healthier and longer naturally. Dr. Khan, welcome to the podcast.
So pleased to be here, Eleanor, and please call me Jalal.
Okay, I will try to remember. I wonder if you could start by just introducing yourself and how you came to even learn about or become so knowledgeable about quantum biology.
Sure. I mean, I'm a curious person by nature, and I'm always wanting to get to the bottom of whatever topic I'm interested in. I'm very passionate about health. I did have some family members that were unwell, and they had some chronic conditions, some autoimmune conditions, and mainstream medicine wasn't necessarily serving them the way that was satisfactory for me. At the time, I was not necessarily kind of hugely aware of alternate health practices, although I dislike the word alternate because I think it's not alternate, it's truth. That's health.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we see in mainstream is, I would regard as the alternate type of health. But for the sake of simplicity, I'll refer to it as alternate health. I wasn't too familiar with it all, but I just wasn't satisfied with the results of mainstream medicine, and so I started to look down these different routes of like diet and nutrition changes and all of this, and they moved the needle a bit, but they weren't necessarily resulting in someone feeling more energetic or the blood markers improving, etc. And so I knew that something was missing, and I was very lucky to come across neurosurgeon Dr. Jack Cruz and what his teachings about quantum biology. And I just went down an enormous rabbit hole, as you have been as well, trying to wrap my head around everything that he was talking about, because Jack is he's brilliant, and his ability to kind of connect so many different aspects like evolution and science and biology and physics and nutrition, and tie all that together into a framework to help us understand how the body works at a like quantum physics level is quite profound. His explanations, though, can sometimes be quite difficult to navigate, and so I read heaps and heaps of his blog posts. I listened to his podcast. I remember the first podcast I ever listened to of his. He was talking about how time in the body works according to a quantum physics principle of stochastic calculus, and I'm like, what is stochastic calculus? Like, so that's the type of explanation sometimes that Jack can give, which is usually like way above most of us, including myself. But yeah, just trying to really nail it down to what are the basics, how does the body work at that level, and then implementing that in our life. And that really did help to make some big shifts for my family members. And then I started to talk about that with patients. I'm a dentist by profession, and whilst as you mentioned, I do that like craniofacial growth guidance for children. Um, I also do it for adults. So I call it craniofacial rehabilitation for adults. And But what I didn't, and that's kind of evolved from 2023 onwards. But from 2022 to 2023, it was like this whole quantum biology journey, which was at the time I thought it was just about health. But little did I know how much of an impact it was going to have on the craniofacial stuff, which I did later. Hence the term quantum dentistry, because your mouth and your face can't grow if your body electrics are off. So yeah, that's kind of, it was a bit of curiosity. It was a bit of wanting to be better, and obviously serving my family, and grateful to have discovered it all and kind of wrapped my head around it. And excited to talk about it today.
Okay, thanks. If I just kind of parallel that with my own journey, I think Dr. Cruz was also the first person I came across, and my mind just got blown because he's talking about so many things I had never heard about, and like you, I then had to start learning and kind of trying to understand what he actually means and what the implications are, and they're so profound. I feel he has a saying, once you've heard and understood this stuff, you can't go back, and I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's totally true.
What I find is that we have, like, it's very deep, complex science to explain something which is very simple to execute in our lives.
Right.
And so because it's so simple, if you say to somebody, start with getting more sunlight and then work your way up to building a solar callus, and getting sunlight at the UVA rise and the UVB rise, and all of those types of things. For them, it's just like, well, like that's just too easy. Like, go outside. How's that going to shift my hypothyroid, or how's that going to do that? Like, it's just too easy. And so a lot of patients kind of see it as, well, that's just too easy, that it's hard. Like, and so I'm like, well, if they really understood the deep, deep science to underpin us saying, get out for morning sunrise, get out for UVA rise, even if you're at the office, get out for UVA rise, those types of things, then they'd be like, oh my God, I've got to do this. They'd shape their entire appointment calendar around the different times of the day where the different frequencies of light come out. But not everyone has the time or the energy to learn the deep science. But those that have, we get so passionate about it because we just know how good it is for people.
Yeah. So can you maybe start, I feel like we're going to go in general and then hopefully dig deeper in certain topics. Explain to the listeners, what is quantum biology?
Sure. So quantum biology is, I guess, an appreciation first that all of the biology that happens in our body is underpinned by applied chemistry, which we call biochemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And biochemistry is things like, hormones, and like hormones attaching into receptors and creating signaling throughout the cells. And biochemistry is the metabolism of food. So things like glycolysis and gluconeogenesis, and citric acid cycle, and metabolism of fats, and all that type of stuff. But underpinning all of that is a physics which is not Newtonian physics, such as the three laws of Newton, but it's actually quantum physics. And the reason for that is that all of the particles that are within us, whether it's like, a hormone like melatonin, or if it's glucose, ultimately there's carbons and there's hydrogen. If you break those down even more, there's electrons. And if the hydrogens lose an electron, they become protons, and these are quantum particles. And so, being quantum particles, it means that they observe the laws or the rules of quantum physics. And there's kind of 4 or 5 main laws of quantum physics, one being quantum entanglement, um, wave particle duality. So there's the double slit experiment is a key. I encourage listeners to look at the double slit experiment on YouTube, because that's kind of like one of the key core foundations of quantum physics, which helps us understand a lot. And then the ability for light to act like waves and particles gets us thinking, well, can electrons act like that? Can protons act like that?
Mhm.
Does the light that we expose ourselves to act like that? And so the more you dig into this, you learn that there's different frequencies of sunlight, and some of them act like waves and some of them act a little bit like particles. So there's all of that physics which is underpinning everything that's happening above. And the Jack Kruse talks about there being 3 kind of core foundations to quantum biology, which is light, water, and magnetism, or light, water chemistry, and magnetism. And essentially, all of that happens at the quantum scale within our cells, particularly within our mitochondria. That's kind of like the center stage where everything takes shape.
Yeah. And so at first, when I was learning about quantum biology, I thought, oh, that kind of throws out everything I've learned, but it actually doesn't. All of that biochemistry is true, but quantum biology helps explain how it works and why it's able to work, right?
Yeah, so like let's have a think about the citric acid cycle, for instance, which happens within the matrix of the mitochondria. Like essentially, from memory, I think it's like a acetyl CoA feeds in, and then it cycles through like 8 or 9 um, reactions
Mm-hmm.
and becomes acetyl CoA again.
Right.
So like that's true biochemistry, but what's the point of that? What's the point of the body taking a molecule, taking it through like 9 different reactions and then becoming the same again? And what the biochemists don't understand is the body's actually filtering out all the hydrogens at every reaction and taking out the deuterium.
Right.
And so the body's selecting so that the thermodynamics of the cell, once that final acetyl CoA goes and does something, is the thermodynamics of the cell is optimized. And so it's really thinking about electrons and protons as being kind of helping us make sense of the biochemistry.
I remember learning about the citric acid cycle, possibly even in high school, and being totally puzzled exactly by what you said. Like, why would it spend all that energy to end up with exactly where it started? And then I talked with Dr. Laszlo Boros, and he explained that really his belief is the citric acid cycle is all about getting rid of deuterium, so that because deuterium, I'm sure you're going to maybe mention it, but it can't function the same as a hydrogen, and it blocks things and cruds up the mitochondria and breaks the nanomotors. And so you have to get rid of deuterium for our cells to work.
That's correct. It's not necessarily getting rid. I believe it's more kind of positioning it in the right part of the
Right,
body.
right.
But it's deuterium is better in the bloodstream than in the cell. And so it's one of those things where like nature doesn't make mistakes. Deuterium can be bad for our mitochondria, but it has a purpose in biology, biochemistry, and biophysics, which I'm happy to share as we go forward.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks for that correction. How does quantum biology impact health and disease? So I'm thinking, for example, of this huge explosion of chronic disease that the world is facing.
Yeah.
And do quantum principles help us understand that?
Yes. It's multifaceted though. So when I learned about quantum biology, I thought that quantum biology was fundamental to health, and I was super excited. But then I started to appreciate the importance of emotions and spirituality as also being a key pillar. I believe that emotions and spirituality are still the key, or not spirituality, but like a disconnection from spirit or a disconnection from one's own essence and soul. I believe that that is the biggest driver behind the health epidemic, that or the chronic disease epidemic that we have. I wish we had a health epidemic. And the reason is that, like, there's multiple layers to our body. I believe that we are all a soul that is inhabiting a physical body, and the physical body might be the superficial layer, but inside we've got an energetic layer, which is like the traditional Chinese medicine, the acupuncture points, and then we've got the 7 chakra centers, which are the coalescence of, like, this, 2 kind of spirals coming down our body, and then when they meet, it's a chakra center, and then they go out again and come back and meet at another chakra center, and each chakra corresponds to 7 years of our life, and they're spinning in a particular way. So there's all of that, which is the energetic or the vital center. Then you've got, like, the mental body, which is the mind, and that also houses the ego. And then above that, or deeper within that, you've got the soul and the expression of the soul in one's true essence. And so I believe that, and I'm happy to be wrong, but as it stands, this is what I believe, that when there's an injury to the soul, that impacts the way that the mind thinks, which impacts the decisions that we make in life. Who is our partner? What type of work do we do? What type of food do we eat? What type of lifestyle do we lead? How do we eat? How do we move, etc.? And then that impacts the energetics and the physical. And so quantum biology is a key aspect, but this whole other area of spirituality and essence is also key, perhaps a bit more important, and can trump the importance of quantum biology. Because I've had many sick people come to me and say, I've tried everything, like they're living a faultless, perfect lifestyle from quantum biology, circadian principles, and they are still unwell. And it makes one think, okay, well, what's missing? And this is where kind of like what you touched on earlier is that there's physical structure, there's metabolism, there's emotions, and then there's spirit. Okay, because if one is doing everything right from a lifestyle perspective, their metabolism should be perfect. But if their emotions are off because of some sort of past emotional trauma, then that is going to trump all the lifestyle things. Also, quantum biology, a big aspect of that is coherence within the body and fascia, and the ability for the body to communicate with different parts of the body at lightning speed, instantaneous, via the fascia, because the fascia is like this big communication highway through our body, and it's made of obviously collagen and water, but signals are able to travel through the water faster than nerve conduction. But if you've got postural issues, like some sort of pelvic issue or something in your spine, or a cranial issue or a sacral issue, that impacts the flow of information through the fascia, which impacts the body's coherence. And that's an instance where physical structure can override quantum biological principles as being a key driver for health for that person. So these are considerations that I think of when I'm kind of assessing a patient and treating a patient and working through. But in answer to your question, just remind me, what was the question again?
Does quantum biology help us understand the disease epidemic?
Yeah. It does, because what's happened is that we've had societal constructs inhibiting the ability of our soul and essence to express the way that they should. And these are, a lot of the messaging that's out in mainstream media and social media about how we should be, how we shouldn't be.
Right.
Polarizing nature of all of the messaging, even in holistic circles, there's a lot of polarizing messages as opposed to unifying messages, because we are all one at the end of the day. And it's not about division, it's about unity. But then you've got non-native electromagnetic frequencies, which for me is like a huge piece of the puzzle, because that plus blue light plus fluoridated water and the high fluoride in our environment, etc., what it does is it impacts the actual quantum physics of the electrons and the protons. It impacts the mitochondrial electron transport chain. It impacts the water inside of our body, because fluoride is it's the most electronegative. Fluorine is the most electronegative element on the planet, and so when we have fluoride in our system, it steals electrons from everything else. And I mean, the thyroid's got T3 and T4, which have 3 and 4 iodines respectively, but because fluoride is more electronegative, it kicks out the iodines off the thyroid hormones. But the thyroid is just one gland, but every gland in our body that secretes something requires iodine, because iodine is like the truck that carries stuff across the border outside of the gland. And so there's a lot of talk about thyroid, but like salivary glands, like iodine is a key piece because salivary glands are secreting. And so like we've got this big issue with iodine, and it's part of it's because the diet's low in iodine, but part of it's because the diet's like, and the water and the tap water and everything is so high in fluoride. So the quantum biology principles and the lack of thermodynamic coherence in our bodies, I believe it can explain a lot of what's going on, because people are just not living healthy lives, and all of these things like non-native electromagnetic frequencies are really affecting the ability of our bodies to operate metabolically. I don't know, I've just got this book next to me. I don't know if you've read it, Invisible Rainbow by Arthur First.
No.
But it's a history of electricity and life, and it talks about the electrification of society. And it really tables it nicely from like the first industrial revolution and the introduction of like the telegraph lines, and then how that became, and that was in like, I think it was the American Civil War when there was telegraph lines that were starting to be rolled out for communication with the front lines. And then it became more about like telegraph lines in the cities, and like he talks about how like in the space of months, like New York City and London, where it was the streets was just a sea of telegraph lines, power lines, from building to building, and you'd have companies that would have their boys up on the roof and like connecting and this and that, and it's like ridiculous numbers of kilometers or miles of telegraph lines. And then World War I was the introduction of the radio. And he talks about a fellow called Marconi who was on one island in the
Canada.
UK. Could have been, well, I think it was the.
He also worked in Newfoundland.
Okay.
Yeah, because Newfoundland's like the closest point in Canada to the UK. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to take the radio waves across the Atlantic, and Marconi was like seriously unwell, and he was he had multiple heart attacks, and Furstenberg puts it down to the EMF of the radio waves, and it's a very fair case that he puts together. It's not exorbitant. Then after World War I, it was the radars that were introduced for World War II. And then Cold War was like the military satellites and the military radars and everything like that. And then the cell phones coming out in 96, 97. And at each big step forward in the electrification of society, he talks about what happened to some of these chronic diseases, such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer. I mean, he talks about how lung cancer has doubled, I think, since in the last 50 years, but the number of people smoking lung cancer has tripled over the last 50 years, but the number of people smoking is halved. Go figure.
All that.
So it's like, is smoking really the cause of lung cancer? Like I'm sure it's a stressor that can contribute to it. I'm not saying go and smoke of everybody, but I'm just that's the curious nature of me. I'm like not afraid to ask the question, like what's actually the key driver behind cancer? And for me, it is part emotional, part spiritual, but also part thermodynamic, which is the quantum biology aspect of the whole health story. And you can't have one thing like right. You have to get all of the things right. You have to get the emotions right. You have to get the spiritual stuff right. You have to get the lifestyle right. You have to get the nutrition right. And that's not easy in a world like that we live in, but it's necessary if we want to achieve the health outcomes that we want to achieve.
So you've just raised a whole bunch of questions, and it's mostly about terminology. So could you describe what thermodynamic means in the way that you're using it?
Sure. So, like, we have energy flowing through us, and so when you have energy in that's flowing, the branch of physics that refers to that is called thermodynamics. So it's basically referring to how is energy flowing through us. So someone that is thermodynamically coherent or efficient, it means that energy is flowing through us well. Okay. So
Okay.
the key thing about our body is that so we are a thermodynamic system, but we are a quantum thermodynamic system in addition to that because of the quantum nature of our bodies. Like we are an electromagnetic system. We produce our own light. We produce our own magnetism. We react to external light. We react to external magnetism. And so we are constantly like evolving within the ecosystem that we are exposing ourselves to. The thing about thermodynamics is that when it's you've got the laws of thermodynamics. So the first law is energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but can be converted from one form into another. That's literally the story of our life. We're just taking in energy and we're converting it into something else. Like food, we see as food, but it's actually stored light because it's grown under photosynthesis. But what if that food is not grown under photosynthesis? What if it's grown under a greenhouse? What if it's grown under like artificial lights in a lab? Then that's going to change the thermodynamics in our body. And then our body is not going to necessarily behave according to the food inputs that we're taking in, because food isn't just about electrons. It is also about the photonic energy that is contained within those electrons, which is imputed into the food when it's grown under photosynthesis. So that's the thermodynamic story. But the second law of thermodynamics is that essentially the body is tending towards entropy or chaos.
I was just going to say define entropy. Yeah.
So our body is tending towards chaos, which ultimately means death, which is why we all die. But the job of health is reducing the chaos within our body and creating more order. And the way that we do that metabolically is with sunlight. Sunlight creates order within our bodies and reduces the chaos. You can never eliminate the chaos, but you can reduce the chaos. Because even though we're a thermodynamic system, it's not perfect. It's not perfectly efficient. If it was 100% efficient, then we would never need to drink water. And the reason I say that is because we produce our own water in our mitochondria. And maybe we'll do a little segment just on mitochondria
Okay.
a little bit later. But like we produce our own water, and if it was perfectly efficient, then we wouldn't need to drink water. But there's always a little bit of an exhaust of free radicals and reactive oxygen species and things like that. And so when you have that exhaust coming off, what happens is that there's a reduced production of water. So we need to have a little bit of water to supplement that. So we are a highly efficient, but we're not a perfectly 100% efficient quantum thermodynamic system. The word quantum, in my mind, in that term quantum thermodynamic, means the information that's been added to the energy flows. So quantum information. So, and that information is light. That information is magnetism. That information is like emotions. It's how you feel, is how you react to something. A lot of people get upset about things, but what they should really be thinking about is their reaction to what's happened, as opposed to what the actual thing itself. Which is, that's looking inward. That's the shadow work and all of that. I hope that answers the question.
So when you that's very helpful. So you talk about food being a source of electrons, and then so that's kind of the quantum level. And then you're saying, but the food also contains, I've heard it called like a barcode or an ID
Yeah.
that gives additional information about how and where the food was grown,
Correct.
and that's also important. So is there any research to support that? I've tried to search a little bit. Like, is that more of a hypothesis, or is there some data to support that that's true?
Um, I'm sure there is, but for me, it's kind of like it's just a common sense thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to think about like the type of society that we built, which like I mean, it's off the back of a lot of technological innovation, which has allowed the population to grow, which has allowed us to, you and I to communicate like over
Mm-hmm.
waves right now. So there's a lot of like great things about the technology that's happened, but it has allowed us to break the laws of physics, of Newtonian physics at least. It's allowed us to break the laws of nature. Like, um, when has it been normal for me to eat bananas from like Indonesia? When
Right.
has it been normal for me to eat avocados that are grown in South America? When has it been normal for Australian lamb to be sold in the States? It's never
Right.
been normal, but the globalization and the shipping and all of that has facilitated that. But nowhere in the history of mankind has um, an Australian in Sydney eaten avocados that are made that have been grown in Chile. So it's only really in the last 200 years that all of that has happened. And that coincides with the last 200 years of like the invisible rainbow going bananas.
Yeah. So maybe to just kind of generalize what you're saying, it would be as people are listening to this and trying to make concrete examples, whenever we're doing something that didn't exist 200 years ago, chances are it could be getting us into trouble.
Correct.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about non-native EMF and why that's so problematic?
Sure. So non-native EMF refers to man-made electromagnetic frequencies, and examples of that are like microwave ovens, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, the cell phone networks like the 3G, 4G, 5G. Um, it's light. It's like light that's coming out of light globes, because really the only like main forms of light that we were exposed to prior to the Industrial Revolution was sunlight, moonlight, and fire.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from that, there was no light being produced that was unnatural. And then we started the light globe in the first industrial revolution, and now there's an explosion of light. Most of us live in light all the time, all day long, and that is itself a form of man-made or non-native electromagnetic frequencies. Now, the thing about electromagnetic frequencies is that it's essentially like a electromagnetic signal or barcode that our body's receiving, and so. In 2016, there was a Nobel Prize for Physics in an area of maths called topology. And topology refers to like the size, shape, and behavior of matter. And what they kind of showed was that when you change the field that a piece of matter is exposed to, what happens is that the size, shape, and hence the behavior of the matter changes. So
Wow.
that's what's happened over the last 200 plus years is that we've had a change in the field. We have a billion more man-made electromagnetic frequencies that we are living under. I'll say that again, a billion more
Mm-hmm.
man-made electromagnetic frequencies that we are living in now compared to 100 years ago. So the field has changed. And when the field changed, the size, shape, and behavior of matter within us, within our brains, within our organs changes. And so what you end up with is, as you say, a change in behavior. There's definitely a change in behavior in society compared to 100 years ago. We don't need to go into the depths of it, but anyone listening can put two and two together. In addition to that, there's a change in size and shape. There's an obesity epidemic globally. That's quite literally a result of non-native electromagnetic frequencies and light impacting the size, shape, and behavior and the signaling. So that's the impact. But I believe it also impacts the way that people think. It also impacts the way that people feel. Because when you're not out in sunlight, like, you get depressed. There's seasonal affective disorder that's quite prominent in the UK, for instance. There's I mean, we know that when you are in sunlight, you make beta endorphin. Beta endorphin is an opiate. Opiates are addictive. We have been wired to be addicted to the sun. People walk,
Right.
they're like, it's a lovely day, but then they put sunglasses and a hat on, and they just kind of restrict their body from receiving those like healthy inputs, even though like their essence is saying, what a lovely day today. But then their mind overrides and puts sunglasses on because sunglasses look good, or because we've been told to put sunglasses on to protect our eyes. But nowhere in the history of mankind were we covering ourselves prior to 200 years that like we do now. It's an unpopular example. I get a little bit of stick for it every now and then, but like, cows don't wear sunglasses. And people might say, oh, well, they're cows, so like obviously they don't have the brains to make sunglasses and manufacture sunglasses and have the limbs to put them on. But it's like, no, they're observing the laws of nature according to them. So what are we doing though? Cows never get sunburn. When they get hot, they just go and stand under a tree. When we get hot, we put sunscreen on and go inside, when all we need to do is go under the shade.
Right.
Um, but it's like the way that we think about all of these things, and we're resistive to change, and we're resistive to this type of messaging. It is all a function of non-native electromagnetic frequencies and blue light. I mean, blue light in the past, like it's been shown to facilitate mind control. It's been shown to impact the cognitive function. It affects our dopamine levels. It affects our reward system. It affects our thermodynamics, because every step of the way, when an electron is funneling through mitochondria to produce water, every single checkpoint, which is called a cytochrome protein, at least the first 4 out of the 5 cytochrome proteins, they're negatively impacted by artificial blue light. So it affects the thermodynamics in our cells, which then affects the energy production, which then affects our ability to have energy.
Yeah, when I heard Dr. Glenn Jeffrey talk about his research, which I think is kind of along the lines of what you're sharing, I was really blown away. Like, my read of it is, he showed that within 15 minutes, if you shine red light on somebody, their mitochondria increase function, and they breathe out more carbon dioxide, which means they're also producing more energy. And if you
Yep.
shine blue light for the same amount of time, they basically shut down and blood sugar goes up because they're not burning it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. The other
Yeah.
thing about carbon dioxide is it's also a sign of like the body's detoxing. Our biggest detox pathway is actually via respiration.
Okay.
And so if someone's like breathing better, it means there's a better detox as well.
Yeah. You're, again, looking at big principles. I'm thinking, I've been kind of giving the message to my community that the more we can be in nature rather than trying to mimic it or control it, the better. Because our body, we evolved in nature. So everything, the sun, the ground, the air, the water, we need it. It's there for a reason.
You're spot on. And it's like, people ask me about red light therapy machines, but there's no red light therapy machine that replaces the sun. Just go outside. It's the same with saunas. Just go outside. It's the
Right.
same with ice baths. Just go into a stream or go into the ocean. Like, so all of these principles are free, is what we're saying. And like, the answers are inside, because it's like, are we brave enough to change our lifestyles, move houses, move location to a type of lifestyle and location where we can freely express what our essence is. And most of us aren't. And look, I'm not saying I'm perfect. Like, I'm living in the city, in the
Yeah.
city. And so there is electromagnetic frequencies where I am, and yes, I do, mitigate, etc. But this is the other side of the coin, is that, like, I'm living on purpose, or like within my purpose, which is to redefine orthodontics
Right.
and save kids from the butchery that happens in modern day traditional orthodontics, which I'm seeing in adults 30, 40 years older, who I treat in my other clinic called Sydney Functional Dentistry, where, like, we see what happens to an adult once the orthodontics and the dentistry is butchered as kids. And so, like, I'm very passionate about that. So in a way, the spirit and the essence override, for me, in my mind, I could be wrong,
Yeah.
overrides the not so ideal environment that I'm living in. Because if I moved out to the sticks and wasn't able to serve children and adults the way that I know I can, and the way that very few dentists in the world can, because what I do isn't very common. I've had
Right.
I've had a family from Canada travel and spend 4 months in Sydney to have treatment with my team. Like, I was humbled by that. But what it shows is what I do is so rare that, like, if every dentist did it, I'd probably be out in the sticks.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we're gonna split this into two parts because there was
Sure.
so much in it. I don't want people to just be overwhelmed and turn it off. So I think we'll split it into two episodes. I really, really appreciate your deep knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Doc. Appreciate it.